Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit tre.radio.
Mark, good morning to you.
Good morning, how are you keeping?
Good, did you hear that?
I did, from a famous tennis match.
Yeah, indeed. McEnroe losing his proverbials in 1980 at Wimbledon. There you go. So, to say that it was, if people thought, you know that thing about, you betting in an easy bet and you think, okay, I can throw the house on this one and go to bed and wake up the next morning knowing that my bet has made me loads of money, and then something happens. There's a glitch in the matrix. What happened over the weekend, Mark?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, I think we have to start with the football because it's been a bit of chaos. But there's been football, there's been golf, there's been Formula One. It's been a chocker block weekend. So it was handy having no plans of going out because I didn't have any time with all the sports going on.
You weren't going to be basking in the sunlight then?
Well, if there was ever any sunlight in Ireland, I might consider basking in it, but it's very rarely there is.
Right then, let's kick off with the big one then. So talk me through it, Mark.
I think the big one has to be the result of the Chelsea-Nottingham Forest game. Of course, it was Chelsea coming out on top with a 3-0 win. But the big news was, Nottingham Forest sacked their manager, Ange Postecoglou, after 39 days, making it the second shortest reign of a Premier League manager. So it was sort of all done so quickly, so rapidly. It was 10 minutes after the match had ended.
Yeah. The
global director of football for Nottingham Forest informed Ange that he was sacked. I think Mr. Marinakis left after 60 minutes after Chelsea got their second goal. And so it was pretty much decided before the match was over that Ange was going to leave Nottingham Forest without even a win on his record. And that is probably the biggest news to come out of this week. Because really it's putting Forest, who were so optimistic at the start of the season, into free fall. Who is available now, who is free that they could bring in that is better than Ange.
But Mark, you see, the thing is, you need to bed somebody in. I mean, this is the problem now with it seems to be shooting from the hip. And if you think about people like Ferguson and Wenger, they did them. When Ferguson took over Manchester United years ago, before your time, young Skywalker, but he was given time to bed in. If Ferguson had come to Manchester United now and not got the results within 30... Liz Truss lasted 45 days and she was beaten by a lettuce, for goodness sake. So, we have to give these guys time, surely. 40 in 30...
Oh, yeah, I fully agree. Mr. Marinakis, who owns Nottingham Forest, has owned, numerous clubs throughout Europe since 2011. And in that time, he's went through 26 managers. So, him sacking a manager, not that all strange of an occurrence, but I'd be in the same camp as you of thinking, hey, managers do need more time. And that probably brings us on to the Manchester United game, because recently Sir Jim Ratcliffe had said, listen, Amorim, no matter what happens this season, is going to be there for 3 years. We're going to give him 3 years to prove that he's the guy.
Yeah.
And I really like that, because you don't really see ownership doing that too often, publicly saying, hey, we back this guy so much, we're giving him this time period. And I really like that move from them. I've never been, a massive fan of everything they're doing, but that certainly was something that I loved. And, of course, the Man United camp is turned around this week as they beat Liverpool 2-1 at Anfield, something they haven't done since the 2015-16 season. I think that must have been Louis van Gaal, and we had, Jesse Lingard and Wayne Rooney in the team. And so it's been a very long time since Man United have won at Anfield, and it's so strange to say this, but it was a deserved win. I think out of the two teams yesterday, they were the ones who deserved it. And of course, now Liverpool have a very, very tough position ahead of them, because they have Eintracht Frankfurt in the Champions League, and they have Brentford and Palace, and they have Villa and Real Madrid and City. So they have 6 matches coming up that are not easy whatsoever. And even a draw would have been enough to, I guess, as Roy Keane put it, stop the bleed. Yeah. So it's going to be a very tough few weeks for Liverpool.
So now here's my question to you, Mark, because you know more about this than I ever will. Is this a perfect storm then? Is this basically, finally, is it a bit like chimps doing Shakespeare? So eventually Manchester United were bound to get something going right for them, and Liverpool, having done, every team, every team has a cyclic run, and they can't be winning day in, day out. So is it just a case of the spheres colliding and coming out in Man U's favour? And is this a real? Should Liverpool be worried now, or are they just saying, okay, five defeats in a row? They're not talking sacking managers there, are they?
No, I think it's a case of, mountains can only be so high and valleys can only be so low. As in, Man United could only, perform at the level they were for so long. And with Liverpool, their ceiling was so high at winning the Premier League that eventually that bubble was going to burst, and especially because they went all out this season. They bought a load of new players, and then their best players from last season are aging rapidly. I mean, we saw that in the Manchester United match. I thought Kanate was brilliant, but I thought Van Dijk was definitely lacking the same energy and pizzazz he had from last season. I don't think it's a question of Liverpool being extremely worried, because I was really impressed by how Slot has handled himself through trouble last season, especially this season. He's a really calm person, and it is just a mixture of so many new players coming in, so many of the Liverpool's best players aging out. So it's not something to be completely worried about. I still have them in the top four very comfortably, but they are making it very hard on themselves if they're thinking of winning back-to-back and back-to-back Premier Leagues. But they're not the only team, that are going for the league that are struggling. Arsenal got recently news that Martin Odegaard would be out for at least 9 games with what was called a medial collateral ligament injury. It's kind of an injury that stays around even after you've recovered from it. So it's hard for them as well. Arsenal are facing trouble. They haven't really, had a lot of convincing games this season, but I still have them as my title favourites. And I think they have good backups. They have Eze, who I've been a fan of since his time with QPR in the Championship. Mm-hmm. So I'm not too worried about Liverpool altogether, because their competition are also facing similar problems. City are in the middle of a tactical transition. Arsenal are facing injuries. So I think it's just the storm that they have to weather. And even if they look at the Brentford game or the Palace game or the Villa game, even if they can get a draw there, it would help give the players a belief that, hey, we can stop this slide and we can work forward. The Real Madrid and the City games are going to be the real testers.
Absolutely. But talking about sort of big European matches, are you away for mucking with the Champions League again? What's going on there?
Yeah, so UEFA announced a format change once again. I wasn't really a massive fan of the last format change. I grew up with, the league you do the league stage, and it's a lot more exciting, where this one just seems like a glorified domestic league table. But apparently only one match now will be played on the opening Tuesday, and then the rest will be sort of spread over Wednesday and Thursday. So the idea is that there's kind of one big match on the Tuesday and the rest are sort of fluttered out. But what this is doing is it's sort of backing up the teams, because obviously the Premier League teams play later in the week. So if they're playing later in the week and then they're also playing a Champions League later in the week, how is that going to work? I mean, how are they going to space that out? So really it's just less recovery time for the teams, and I can't imagine the players or the managers or really anyone, even medical teams, being especially ecstatic for this change coming up, because it's essentially just going to mean they have less time to recover, and more injuries are going to happen.
And two of the sleeper teams, if you like, at the moment in the Premier League. I mean, Spurs lost at Villa, didn't they? But Palace are having a relatively, they're sort of like there or thereabouts, aren't they? I know it's early days and we don't really have to wake up until Christmas, but still they were good. They were, I mean, not a good result for Spurs, but and how did Palace get on?
And the Palace got on good. I've been really impressed with them. I think they had a 3-3 draw. I think that was it. But they sit like 6th at the minute, and they're pretty adamant to hold on to Glasner, because who wouldn't be? And his dream team, Bayern Munich, currently have Vincent Kompany, who they're not looking to get rid of. So it would make sense if Glasner was to sign an extension, which Palace are hoping will happen. And then the Villa-Tottenham match, I mean, sort of odd results, since Villa have been in the midst of trying to turn around their poor start to the season, and Tottenham probably in the best position possible, where people really haven't been talking too much about them. because most people expected them to sit middle of the table, and they've been performing really well under Thomas Frank, and I've been really impressed with them. But it was determination from Villa to come from behind, and I was really impressed with Morgan Rogers, who's sort of, he's not been the man Villa have been hoping all this season, so he's hoping to turn it around. So I think it was a match where Villa had a lot to prove, and I think they came out and they proved it. So that's the important thing. And they had a really cool counter-attack. I thought it was effective, and Spurs just had a little bit of nerves, and Villa took full advantage of it.
And what's a good result for Brighton? Two of the great party capitals of the world. I've had some wild nights in Brighton that I'll never forget, and I had a night in Newcastle that I can't even remember. So tell me a little bit about because it wasn't good news for them. Who, what, and where?
Yeah, well, Brighton managed to edge past Newcastle 2-1, and this is, of course, bad news for any Man United fans because they're next up on the list, Manchester United versus Brighton, and United have never had great luck against Brighton, but they're another team who've had a relatively Brighton-ish start to their season, and a brace from Man United veteran Danny Welbeck as well. So there's a lot to be happy about if you're a Brighton fan. I guess Newcastle are still waving the waters in a post-Isaac era, but Nick Wolfmade and their striker they got to replace him has been really impressive, and he produced another goal in this match. But ultimately, I think Newcastle are kind of short on that attacking ruthlessness that you'd expect from some of the top teams in the Premier League. They definitely have flashes of it, but they just need to show more of it. And I think, especially in a tight game, Brighton's the last team you want to play because they just play with such maturity, they play with such patience, and they have that killer instinct. So it was just two good teams matching up, and it was a tight contest which Brighton came out on top of.
Right, fine. Let's move on. Talking about sort of killer instincts. What's been happening in the golf? We were in India, weren't we? Well, not you and I, but the golf tournament was in India.
Yeah, no, I haven't made it to that side of the world yet, but Tommy Fleetwood did, and he enjoyed his time there. Yeah. He came away with the World Indian Championship in Delhi, winning by 2 strokes pretty definitely, and shooting, I think, a final round of 65 to finish 22 under. And of course, we've been very complimentary of Tommy Fleetwood. He had a good Ryder Cup, and before that, he's had a good season. I think a lot of people are behind him since there's been a lot of, I guess, tragicness to his career and just being so close at so many points. But his form has been immaculate in this last stretch, especially heading towards Dubai. And I've been really impressed. And another person I was impressed by, who I talked about in the Spanish Open in sort of a negative light, was Shane Lowry, who sort of had a hangover from the Ryder Cup. We were expecting him to come out and do well at the Spanish Open, and he didn't, but he did do well here. He was tied for third, and that mightn't sound too good, but third place comes with a six-figure prize. So it's always a good thing getting that in the bank.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, it's third place. And, these guys are under an awful lot of mental pressure. I mean, people say, oh, yeah, golf. But, I mean, you're playing in this, you're playing in the Masters in the Madrid Open or the Spanish Open or whatever. And you come out the Ryder Cup, which was challenging, to put it mildly, shall we say, for the Europeans. Then you're going into John Hahn territory. Now, I know that even the Spanish are a bit more dignified than the Americans were. And then you've got to go just over the other side of the world. So I think we can talk about pressure. Talking about pressure, this, now you and I talked before, I think this could be one of the greatest comebacks of motor racing history. Off you go and explain why.
Yeah, I was up late last night watching it, of course, late being 10 o'clock, and the commentator said something that I just loved, and it was, the Max attack is back, and I really like that because out of the last 133 possible points, and Max Verstappen has gained 119 to place himself only 26 points behind championship leader Oscar Piastri. Yeah. So a few weeks back, I was talking with Dave, and we posed this question of, is it possible for Max Verstappen to win the championship? And the answer was very unlikely, because he'd have to come first in every race. Yes. And he'd have to hope for a downturn in performance of McLaren. Yes. And so far, that is exactly what has happened. McLaren, the last 2 races in Singapore and then in sprint qualifying in Austin, the McLarens crashed into each other. and now we're looking at a possible place here where Max Verstappen could theoretically win the championship, and it's not such a crazy statement to make.
Yeah.
He's had some just serious momentum, and one thing that I was really impressed by, he's always setting records, but the great Jim Clark has held a record for a long time in F1 of the most Grand Slams, having 8 Grand Slams. With Verstappen, he had a Grand Slam in Austin. A Grand Slam is securing pole position.
Exactly, yeah.
He's leading every lap of the race, winning the race and setting the fastest lap. And he has 7 of those. So it is possible to believe that by the end of the season, he could have 8 or 9 the way he's performing. I mean, it's been so dominant.
And we talk about pressure. We talk about pressure, but from the McLaren side, they've got the champion. They've got the constructors' championship. But so not only do they have to be careful of crashing into each other, because McLaren have mucked up, I think, on the team orders, and so they should have said, right, one of you is going to be team. We're pushing that way because there's all this thing. But now they know that if they do crash into each other and take each other out, Verstappen's got to win one race. So, for example, next race, Mexico, Lando and Oscar have a coming together. Max wins. Max is then leading the world championship, and then we have all the fun and games coming off, because those, Lando and Oscar are younger. And remember, Max is the sort of guy who, on his weekend off, goes off to Nürburgring and sets like ridiculous times in a endurance car race. It's just, he is, and I'm saying this through gritted teeth, but he's a once in a lifetime talent, that boy, isn't he?
Oh, he is, and I mean, it was. You knew he was doing good yesterday, because the cameras didn't really, come to him until lap 40, lap 45. And when a driver is so dominant, you just know he's dominant, because the race director doesn't cut to that car. They just know he's winning, and he was winning by a lot, and he wasn't in any threat of not winning yesterday. And it has been a disastrous few races from McLaren for the exact reason of team orders aren't defined. You've got 2 world-class drivers fighting for the title, and I don't think McLaren should be viewing it as like, oh, hey, we need to start working together as a team because we have Verstappen right behind us. I think they just generally need to set an order of how things are done in that team for just general growth. I mean, we saw flashes of it at the start of the season of like issues, and then in Canada as well with Norris going to the back of Piastri, and now they're sitting so close. I think it's less than 20 points separates the 2 of them. No matter what happens, you're going to look out for yourself in those situations. Even if McLaren says to Norris, hey, hold back, let Oscar through. And Lando's not going to listen to that, because he's fighting for a world championship. And we only have 5 races to go. We've Mexico, Brazil, Abu Dhabi, and I think those are races that Verstappen has always shone at and shined. Yeah. And McLaren really needed to start considering, like, hey, who's our number 1 driver? Who are we going to back for that championship? Because there's this phrase of losing yourself to gain. And it's the same with the race. If you're going to have these internal issues and you're going to lose points through penalties and whatever have you, you're going to lose the race to someone else who's not doing that. And Red Bull are in the unique position of, we have one guy that we're backing. And I noticed that yesterday Verstappen was talking over the radio about going in for soft tires and seeing how those worked. So what Red Bull did is they sent in Tsunoda first for the soft tires for 2 laps to see, what the data and feedback was, and then Verstappen came in for them. So having that benefit of having, one team back one racer, it's not something that we're just seeing this season, but historically has always been the case.
Yeah, exactly.
Ferrari always backed Schumacher, and McLaren always backed Senna. It's not something that we're saying.
I can hear Alain Prost fans throwing things at the wireless with that one, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true, though. I think, in my opinion, I think it's true. But both were great drivers. But no, Verstappen, it's very much a case of if McLaren aren't careful.
You see, I will go back and predate you for that, because what you, for every Niki Lauda, you need a Clay Regazzoni, who is charismatic, happy to be there, drives a Ferrari, and has got a really big moustache, and that's what you need in the number 2 driver.
Yeah, and the Red Bull have it in Tsunoda. And it's a tough case, because I love both McLaren drivers. I think they both bring such great unique talents to their drive. But it is a case that McLaren are going to end up losing this for themselves, especially, I mean, Brazil that is a Max Verstappen racetrack.
Yeah.
It's hard to see anyone else winning there. I remember what was it? I think it was last season when Verstappen was starting from the back. And that rain just came in, and he went from I think it was 16th or 17th to first place, and Norris ended up spinning. I mean, it was it was pure cinema, and that's what this season is. And I think it's very easy to look at the last 3 or 4 seasons and be bored by it because Verstappen has dominated so much, but this season has just been a blockbuster movie with what it's given us.
Indeed. Mark, I'm going to have to let you go, my friend, because I've got to get the Lost Lyricist view of the pieces out of the way. If people want to find you online and say hello and say nice things to you and argue about Verstappen, where's the best place to track you down?
I will. We're on Instagram, and we're on wherever you find your podcast with Daybreak Sports and Mark on the radio on Instagram.
Wonderful stuff. Mark, it's been a busy. Thank you for clearing the mists. I try not to get too damp out there in the weather, my friend. Mark Hanbidge, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this programme, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit TRE.radio.